the software I'm going to cover today is Smartnetics. Some time ago, we did another webinar on how to design an inductor. We could do the same with a transformer, but in this case, I'm going to take a different approach for this particular webinar. So usually when dealing with magnetics, there are two main topics. How to design one, which as I said, is something we covered in another webinar, and a different challenge, which is to try to understand or to get the main parameters of something that is already manufactured. In this case, instead of an inductor, I'm going to deal with a transformer, but it could be the same for the inductor. And the objective is to know the physical properties of the device, something that we, in general, don't have to know if this is a transformer that is from a different project or something that you had from a different client or something that was just laying around in the laboratory and that you don't know, in theory, anything about. The next thing you usually want to know is, well, now I know how it's made or what it's made of, but I have to know if it's going to be able to operate properly in a different application. Maybe we have a transformer for one project, we want to reuse the same thing to avoid the cost or the time we need for a different project, and we need to know if it's not going to saturate, if it's not going to burn, etc. And also, it's very convenient to have a tool to estimate the parameters that are usually very hard to measure. In general, we can measure the geometry, we can more or less measure the DC resistance, that kind of stuff, but it's very hard to measure with precision the inductance. It's hard to get what's the conductor that this is made of, to get the gap, etc. Without this dismantling the device, which is the objective today, to get all the information we can to be able to reproduce the design and to be able to know if we can use this for a different project without dismantling the design. To do so, what we do in Smartnetics is, thanks to the approach that we took for the tool that provides not a single result, but every possible result that fits a set of specifications, we can get every possible combination of parameters in a database that could lead us to a transformer like the one we're going to analyze today. And after that, once we have identified the transformer we have, we can easily see if it's going to operate properly in a different scenario, with a different current, a different voltage. We can also check if we can do something very similar, but with other components to save money or to save time, etc.
Sorry, Jaime. You are not yet sharing your screen. I don't know if it's...
Oh, I'm very sorry about that. I'm better with magnetics than I'm with presentations, I promise. Sorry about that. You're going to get the presentation afterwards, so it doesn't matter, it's just what I'm going to cover today. So instead of using a presentation, what I'm going to do a live demo, and I'm going to analyze this kind of transformer. This is a transformer that was lying around in our laboratory. We don't know the materials, we don't know the geometry, we don't know the wiring, we don't even know the touch ratio, we don't know anything about it. And we want to know if we can reproduce the design and, above all, if we can use the same transformer in a different application to avoid the need to manufacture a different one, okay? As I was saying, I'm going to do that in a live demo, and I'm going to cover 5 steps, the 5 steps I'm going to do to reproduce the design. First, there are some parameters that we can get with very easy physical measurements, with just some measuring tape or something like that. Then I'm going to cover some of the stuff we can get through electrical measurements. In this case, the aim is to keep it as simple as possible and as cheap as possible. So I'm not going to use any fancy electrical equipment, only an oscilloscope, a very small oscilloscope, or a multimeter, or a DC source, something very simple to keep it as cheap as possible, okay, and as easy as possible. Then I'm going to show how to configure Smartnetics to reproduce the design, how to get every possible device that can provide a transformer close to the one we're studying, and then to check if we can use the same device in a different application, as I was saying, okay? I will go to Smartnetics. This is the first, let's say, dialog one sees when opening Smartnetics, but in this case, we're not starting in the application itself. We're going to start first with what can we get about the geometry of the device first. So I have the device in here. It's a very heavy device, like, I don't know, 7, 8 kilos or something like that. It's very, very big. It's like 20 centimeters or something like that. So the first step is to get as many physical dimensions as we can. So to do so, I'm just going to use a ruler, and we can see that the width of the device is like 10 centimeters, more or less. The height is like 12 centimeters, more or less. And the width is like 192, more or less. So now that we know the geometry of the core, we can go to Smartnetics and we can check if those dimensions correspond to anything that we already have in the database. So we don't have to generate a new geometry. In this case, we can see the length in here. Okay, in the sense we can see that the length in the magnetic refers to this dimension of the core. So we have measured that it's close to 100 millimeters, and we have one in here. In this case, it was already selected that matches that specification. Also, we can see that we measured a total height of 120 millimeters, which is 2 times the height of a single core, so it matches this one as well. But we can see here that we measured 192 millimeters, but the width in that direction of this particular core is only 27.5 millimeters, okay? And we know that there's not any core that is this big. So we can know from this that we're using several cores stacked in parallel. So the first thing we can do is, now that we have the geometry, how many cores do we have in parallel? Stacked, I mean. So over this dimension here, 25.7, so 7. So now we know that we have, in this case, 7 cores stacked in parallel. And we'll go back to the camera. So we have like one core like this, and there are 7 stacked in parallel to make the full device. I'm going to go back to Smartnetics. So we have selected the geometry. Now we can set the minimum and maximum number of cores. In this case, I'm going to make all of them be 7, because we know that 7 is the total amount of cores we have. This is what we can get from the core, because there's no way to get the core material without further measurements, something with an impedance analyzer or something like that, that gets us some results about the permeability or something like that. But what we can know is that it's a ferrite. So in this example, I'm just going to select one ferrite material and just assume it's one of the ones we commonly use in the lab. Okay, that's about the core. But the next thing we can measure is the winding or both windings. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my camera. We have access to the windings at the front side and at the back side. I'm going to use the back side because it's easier in this case, and we can measure the wire geometry. Sorry, I don't know if it's okay. Yes. So as you can see, we have an external diameter of more or less 7 millimeters, 7 point something. It depends on the strength of my grip in here. So close to 7 millimeters. Okay. This is not the same we have in the core, when there's only a few geometries that are valid in this case. In the wires, there's a much wider selection of wires. And I cannot be that sure about the diameter, because it really depends on how I measure that. So instead of selecting a single one, what I'm going to do is, since I know it's close to 7, 6 millimeters, something like that, I'm going to choose every wire that is close to that. That I can see in here, the external diameter of the wires. So, for example, this one is 5.6, so I'm going to consider that a valid option. 5.5, 7.8, 7.1, those are valid options. 7.5, for example, the same. Okay. What can we know with them? After this, I have access to what I will call the primary side, the one that is outside of the other wire. I don't have proper access to the secondary winding. I will try to move this. But what I know is, even though I don't see the number of turns or how the secondary is stacked because it's inside, I know that they are using the same wire, okay? So I don't need to select different wires for primary and secondary, okay? And the other thing I know is that even though they are very big wires, like wider than my finger, they are very flexible, okay? So we can know that they are not using rigid wires, they are only using lead wires. Okay, so I will take out this one because this one will be very rigid, and we know it's not the case. Okay, this is about the geometry, but there are more stuff that we can know just by a simple inspection. As I was saying, I don't have access to the secondary because it's inside, but I can take a look at the primary. And I know that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 turns. And I know that every turn is composed by 3 wires in parallel. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. I will try to focus it very closer, but every turn is composed of 3 wires with this Vitrion tape composing every single turn, okay? So we know it's 5 turns of 3 wires each in parallel. So we can set that as well in our application. We can go to general, we can set some of the design parameters. We don't have to set everything I mean, because we don't know everything, but we can set the stuff we know so we don't have to calculate. So we know the number of turns for the primary side is 5, and we know that the number of turns, the wires in parallel are 3 times 1. And here I have to make a comment because there's a difference between what I'm trying to reproduce and what I can reproduce in magnetics. In the real device, as you can see, there is like a triangle shape, let's say, for the stacking of the wires. They have 2 wires and 1 on top of that. It is something that is not actually currently available in magnetics, because the only kind of paralleling strategy we allow in magnetics is a rectangular stacking of the wires. This is just an example. For example, let's say we have 6 wires. There are 4 ways to stack those wires in magnetics: fully horizontal, or fully vertical, or any combination that provides a rectangle. Okay, so in this case, I cannot reproduce that kind of triangle we have in the real world, but I'm choosing a 3 times 1 stacking of the wires because it will be close enough. I don't expect a very big difference due to that kind of paralleling strategy. Okay, so I'm selecting here 3 times 1. Okay, the remaining thing we can see just with the naked eye is that we don't have a bobbin here. There is nothing. Sorry, there is nothing between the core and the winding. Okay, so I will deactivate the use of a bobbin in Spanish. It's also here in the device parts. I can configure the core, the conductors, etc. And I'm going to choose not to include a bobbin because we know we don't have one. Okay. Up to here, this is everything we can easily measure with just the naked eye. We don't have to dismantle anything. We have easy access to all of that stuff. But there are more things we can get with very simple electrical measurements. Why do we need that? Because the only compulsory thing in magnetics for the design of a transformer is the turns ratio in here. We have already seen that the number of turns for the primary is 5 because it's the wind that is at the outside, so it's easy to see, but we don't have access to the secondary side. So to get the turns ratio, we need to find that electrically. The easiest way is just to inject a perturbation at one of the windings, measure the result at the other winding, and just get the data from there. That can be done with a signal generator and a multimeter or something like that. In this case, to make a more visual representation of that, I'm going to use an oscilloscope just so we can see the relationship between those two. Back to my camera, I have an oscilloscope in here. Okay. The good thing about this scope is that it has a signal generator, so I'm going to connect positive and negative terminals to the primary side. And I'm going to measure that perturbation I'm including in parallel with the perturbation. And I'm going to see what we get at the secondary side when we include that perturbation. So one in here and one in here. Okay. As I was saying, the good thing about this scope is that the generator is built in. So I will activate the generator. I don't really care about the frequency or the amplitude or anything because the only thing we are interested at is the relationship between the primary and secondary. So anything will do. And this is what we need. Okay. So as you can see, the primary side is connected to the yellow channel, the secondary one to the orange channel, let's say. So since they have the same scaling here, you can see that the primary side is seeing 5 volts, while the secondary side is seeing, let's say, 10 volts. So what we're interested in here is only the ratio, so the voltage at the first winding over the voltage at the second one, which is 5/10, which is 0.5. So this is what we have to input in here. Okay, this is the minimum amount of data we need, because it's compulsory to input the turn ratio if you want to design a result. Okay, but with very easy measurements, we can get some more information that is going to be useful in the next step. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of measuring the turn ratio, measure the DC resistance. We can measure the one at the primary side or at the secondary side. We don't care. The thing is, it's very hard to measure with cheap equipment a resistance that is so low. So since it's going to be hard, no matter what, I will try to measure the winding with the higher resistance. And we know that the primary has only 5 turns with 3 wires in parallel, so the resistance is going to be extremely low, while the secondary has less wires in parallel and has more turns, because the turn ratio is lower than 1. So instead of measuring the primary side, I'm going to measure the secondary side. I will move back to my camera. I will take out the oscilloscope. I'm not going to need that anymore. And I'm going to move this one. This is quite heavy. Okay. And for this measurement, instead of an oscilloscope, I'm just going to use a DC source and 2 multimeters. Okay. Ideally, the DC source can measure both voltage and current, but in reality, when trying to measure values that are so low, I know that we will need something to measure properly the current and the voltage. So what I'm going to do in this case is I will inject a perturbation at the secondary side, as I was saying. I'm going to measure the current I try to input just to check if what the voltage source says is true. And I am going to measure the voltage as well, just so we can get voltage over current and calculate the DC resistance. Okay. Okay, as you can see, once I turn it on, this is the maximum current that the voltage source allows, and it matches the one we're measuring with the multimeter. And this is the voltage that this DC source is reading. And as you can see, it really doesn't match the one we really have. That's the reason I had to use a multimeter to calculate the voltage, because we have something close to 15. I don't know if you can see the dot in there, but it says 15.7 millivolts, and it is not something that the voltage source can measure. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just to calculate the resistance. So more or less 15.7 over 3.1. So something close to 5 milliamps. So this is the DC resistance, only the DC part of the secondary side. As I said before, we could do some measurements about the AC resistance or the inductance or something like that, but we will need equipment that is way more expensive. So I prefer just to keep it simple for this particular measure. Okay. So now we have done every physical measurement we can, every electrical measure we can without dismantling the device. So the next step is to go to Smartnetics now and just check what we can get from the device. Okay. In general, the application is prepared to design a magnetic. Okay, so you can input the real current you're going to have, the real voltage you're going to have, and the application is going to automatically discard any value that is going to saturate or to burn or anything like that. In this case, we don't know the current we're going to use, or the current they did use when they designed this transformer, or the voltage. So I'm going to use just very low values to be sure that it's not going to saturate or anything like that, and that the application is not going to discard that design, because I don't care at this moment what they did in the past. Okay, so just very low values, and what I'm going to do now is the same. I don't know if they took into account the saturation. So I'm not going to discard any design for being close to it. I don't know the number of wires in parallel they used. So I'm going to impose a very high limit just so I don't discard any design. I'm not going to limit the parallel combinations. I don't know the ratio for the window, I'm sorry, that they use for primary and secondary. So instead of limiting it to very specific values, I'm going to sweep from 0.1 to 0.9, and let's say 100 possible values or something like that. I don't know the combination of terms they did use. So I'm going to use a very high number just so I know that I try everything. And I don't know if they took into account the screen depth, so I'm not going to use that restriction. And I don't know if they took into account the current density as a limitation. So I'm going to take that out as well, okay? And also, at this moment, I don't know the current or voltage they did use in the past. So I don't care about the temperature calculation I'm going to get because I only used like 1 volt and 1 amp. So it makes no sense to do that calculation, okay? So now that we know every physical parameter, every electrical parameter, and we have lifted every restriction that we have in the tool, we can find every combination of the parameters in the databases that provides a device that can fit the one we have on our tape. That we can do in here, just by pressing begin magnetic channel, okay? So by pressing, you can see all those combinations that will provide let's say a doable device, and it's automatically sorted in some variables, like the variables that are usually interesting when designing a transformer. In this case, for example, we have the maximum temperature in here, but since I deactivated the calculation, they all have the same. So I'm going to use something that is more interesting for us in this case. For example, the number of turns of the secondary, okay? Once again, they have the same value because we measured the primary side and we set a fixed value for the turn ratio, so there's a single solution. But we can see other stuff that is more interesting. For example, instead of the temperature, once again, we can see the number of layers of the secondary side. Because we know that we only have one, because it's something we can see with the naked eye, that we only have one layer of secondary windings. And we don't care about the cost, because it is something that was done in the past, but we can see the values of something we have already measured, which is the DC resistance of the secondary side, okay? So now that we have this information, we can start filtering out the devices that really resemble the one we have on our tape. We only have one layer for the secondary. I will show once again what I'm referring to. I'm sorry. So the secondary is the one that is inside. So we know that there's a single layer of secondary, okay? Because there's a single wire in here. They don't grow in horizontal. Okay, so this is the reason I'm only taking the ones with a single layer. And there are many possible DC resistances for those wires, for the wire in the secondary. We measured 5 point something millions, but in magnetics it's not taking into account the resistance due to the connections, the resistance due to the terminals, that kind of stuff. So we will have something close to 5 millions, but not exactly 5 millions. So I will get all of these designs as possible designs, because I don't really know the exact resistance that we would expect, okay? So now that we have only a small number of possibilities, and that we know that all of them match the physical measurement we did, we can go to the next step, which is selection, to see the differences between those possibilities. As you can see, the geometry is fixed, because this is the one we measured. They all use 7 cores stack, because this is the one we measured. The primary always have 5 turns, because this is the one we measured. The difference between them is what wire they use in the primary and secondary sides, because we did a very fast measurement, but we don't really know the exact diameter of the wires. What do we know? What we know is that even though we don't have access to the secondary side because it's inside, we know that they are using the same wire at primary and secondary because they are the same wires, okay? So we will restrict our decisions to only the possibilities that use the same wire at primary and secondary side. This is one of those possibilities, the one that uses this lead wire with 2,835 wires in parallel of 0.071 millimeters in diameter. This would use different wires, so it is not a possibility. It is not, it is not, it is not, it is not. This one is also a possibility. It's the same wire for primary and secondary side. This is not, this is not, this is not, and this is the other possibility, okay? So these are the only three options we have to make the device we want only using one kind of wire. What we don't know yet is which one is that wire, okay? Because we have several possibilities. The next thing we can see is, as I was saying before, in the secondary side, we know that we only have one layer of wire. Once again, back to the camera, we only have one layer at the secondary side. We may have more than one at the primary side, but only one at the secondary side. So I will keep on reducing the possible designs to get only the ones with a single layer. In this case, from the three devices that we had before, this one will need 2 layers, so it is not a possible solution. And this one will need 2 layers as well, so it is not a possible solution. So as you can see, there's only a single possible solution that will make a device close to the one we have. So I will select it, okay? What we can do once we select that is to go to device and check if the geometry matches what we were expecting. We know that the port matches because it's something we selected before, and I'm going to do a physical comparison between them. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So what we can see here is the cores are the same. The secondary winding, which is the orange one in Smartnetics, is or seems very close to the one we have on the inside because they are all in vertical and it matches. And the only difference is that in the real device, we have 3 wires in parallel for the primary, and in the Smartnetics, since we don't allow that kind of approach, they are all in vertical. So there will be a small difference in the total resistance or in the leakage inductance or the AC resistance, something like that, but we don't expect that, that difference to be very big, okay? So we can assume that this device is very close to the one we really have in here, okay? So this is the first step I wanted to show you today. So how to reproduce your real design. This way, you can not only know your device, you can also manufacture more devices because you know how to do it. You can do slight modifications of your device because let's say you don't have this wire anymore or this wire is expensive for any reason. You can see in here how to make devices that are very close to the one you have, but with slight differences. So let's say you prefer to use a different wire because it's cheaper, or you prefer to use a different wire because you already have that on your laboratory, or because you use that for whatever reason, or let's say you want something with a smaller diameter because you think it's going to be better at high frequency. You have easy access to all those possibilities. So on top of reproducing some design that you already had in the past, you can even improve it or change it slightly so you save on cost or on losses or on any particular parameter you consider important, okay? So this was the first step, how to reproduce what you already have on your laboratory. The next step is to go a little bit further, which is something we think it's one of the best say abilities of our application, which is, okay, now I know the device I have. I don't know the original application of this device, but I want to use that for a different project. So how can I find out if my device is going to work properly in that different project? What we can do for that is, okay, we don't really care anymore about the possible combinations. We only care about the one we have in the laboratory. So we will set everything to have only that possibility. So in the wire, I'm only going to allow the one I know I have. For primary, secondary, and I know the secondary side only has one turning path. Okay? So now if I go to design the devices, there's obviously only a single solution because I have restricted everything to only have this particular solution, which is the one I'm interested in. Okay? I haven't done anything new. I'm just restricting them. So now I want to use this device for a different application. How can I know, for example, if my device is going to saturate or not? Okay, let's say we have a new application, a new project, let's say, and we're going to have a rectangular voltage, 800 volts peak to peak, and 25 kilohertz, for example. So now what we can do is, okay, this is the new voltage. We have said everything about the geometry, so let's design again. The device is obviously the same, and now we don't really care about the number of turns, but we care about the peak-to-peak flux density. As you can see here, for this device, at 800 volts peak-to-peak, 25 kilohertz, we would get a peak-to-peak flux density of something close to 300 millitesla or something like that, which means that the peak field density is half of that, like 105 and 50 or something like that. So very far from the saturation limit of a ferrite. So this is something we can use for that particular voltage. Instead of taking a look at that in those axes, you can always go to the detailed view, let's say, of the device to see the real value, and it's in here, okay? So this is the peak-to-peak value. So the peak value is one half of this, so 159 or something like that millitesla, so very far from saturation. This is about the voltage, but we need not only to know that it's not going to saturate, we need to know that it's not going to burn. So the next thing we can configure is, okay, we deactivated before the temperature calculation, so we will activate that again. And to check the real temperature we're going to get, we need the voltage for the core losses and the current for the winding losses. So for this particular project, we're going to use a triangular current, 150 amps peak to peak, so 75 peak. And once again, let's see if with this current, it's going to be able to operate. Okay? The peak to peak value of the field is obviously the same, and we don't really care about the secondary layers now, so I'm going to change that for temperature. Okay? So as you can see, the temperature we expect in this device is around 108 degrees. We know that these specifications were the worst point for our particular project. So if even in the worst point, we are at 108 degrees or something like that, we know that we can work. We can go to the detailed view to get the real number, which is in here, 108. And the good thing about this is we don't only have access to the maximum temperature. In the last window, we have access to the temperature distribution. So we can get the temperature at the center of the core, at the center of the primary and secondary windings, at the lateral and the bottom of the cores, etc. So we can really see what to expect if we really try to use this device in a new project. The next thing we can do is, okay, we didn't have any information before we did this analysis, but in this case, since we know everything, we can generate a report that generates a PDF with all the information that we got, the one we have with the measurements and the one we have thanks to Smartnetics, in a single PDF file. So in here, we have access to the geometries, the same thing we measured, on how the wires are stacked. We can know in here the approximate weight or cost or area, etc. of the device, the expected losses, the expected peak value of the flux density, the temperature distribution. We can even know the wires of the primary and secondary side, whether we are going to use a bobbin or not. You even have access to the meters or kilograms of wire you need to buy if you want to reproduce the design for primary and secondary, the numbers of cores, the materials that you're using, everything you have access in here. So this way you can reproduce your design, check if you can use the same design in a different project, and the last thing you can do is, without knowing anything about 3D tools or finite element tools, we provide the option for the user to export to finite element tools in demand. ANSYS, you can export to ANSYS Maxwell for the electromagnetic analysis, or ANSYS IcePack for the thermal analysis. I'm sorry about this because I don't have the path in here, and I will just go to the here. So without knowing anything about the finite element software, you can generate a model, and if you have a valid license of ANSYS in this computer, you can automatically run the simulation. If you don't have a license in here, what you can do is you can generate the model in here and then send the model to someone that has a license and can run the simulation. This way, once we press on launch ANSYS, without knowing, as I was saying, anything about finite element modeling, it automatically replicates the geometry you measure, the wire you measure, it inputs the current and voltage perturbation that you're going to try to achieve in your project, and it automatically creates everything. In principle, we made a 3D version, but you can do a 2D version. You can use symmetry to take out parts of the device. In this case, since we selected 3D and 2D, we already got the 3D version, so now it's creating the 2D version, so you can speed up the simulation, and it automatically even creates the reports. You can see the fields and inductance, resistance, etc. So you can see everything without the need to know anything about finite element simulation or 3D modeling or anything. Everything is done automatically. And the same goes for the people that instead of having ANSYS has Altair Flux. So I will take this. I will go to my desktop once again because I have some accents in the past and they don't like accents usually. Is one of the types of being Spanish. So once again, you can generate the models. And once you have the model, you can send that to a different person if you don't have Flux in here, or you can just launch Flux and it will automatically start building your device. I will just wait a little in here. Just so you can see, okay? So we will start generating the same device with the wires and the core and the materials, etc. So you don't have to know anything about this kind of tools. You can just let the Smartnetics do all for you, okay? So this is, to sum up, this is everything that you can do with our tool regarding the characterization of some device that was already made. You can get all the parameters. You can check if it's going to be able to operate in a different condition. You can export that to external tools, and you can find different combination of the parameters, for example, of the wires, that can produce a similar device that may be more convenient for you, because it's cheaper or because you already have some of the materials, etc. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going just to go back a little to the presentation, because this is what we do now, and I want just to show you the roadmap we have for the upcoming versions. We're going to include the mechanical drawings, a better representation of the B and H fields, so the BH curve, how to use for conversion, and how to export to different softwares. So FEMM for the people that doesn't have an ANSYS or a Flux license, how to export to PCIM, how to PSIM, I mean, how to export to Simba. We're going to improve the user experience, etc. So this is what we do up to here. This is what we're going to do in the short term. So I will just go back to Miriam. This is our contact information, and we can wrap up. You can get our information. If you want to ask something by email, we will ask as fast as we can. You can ask for a trial if you want to check the software yourself. And now I'm open to your questions in case there is any question now during the webinar. Okay.